Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome into Capital View, a weekly webcast brought to you by the Daily Journal and djournal.com. Coming to you every Monday around 2 p.m. live here at djournal.com. I'm your host, Brad Locke, joined, as always, by Capitol Bureau Chief Bobby Harrison down there in Jackson. Bobby, how's it going? Have a good weekend. I know your Reds took 2 of 3 from my Cardinals, so that was good for you.
Yeah, it was a good weekend. Enjoyed watching the final round of the Masters. It was overall a pretty good weekend.
Yes, congrats to Sergio Garcia. I hate I missed it. I didn't get to watch any of the Masters. I like to usually do that, but I had too much stuff to do around the house and whatnot. But congrats to him. So there's your golf and baseball talk for this episode of Capitol View. I guess we'll talk about non-sports things, Bobby. Let's talk about the state revenue collections. We finally got some good news, Bobby. It's only 1 month, but collections up 12.5% over projections in March. That bucks the trend because, as we know, and as if we've belabored the point, revenue collections have been sluggish for a while now. This is the first time, I guess, since last May that they've been above projections.
That's right, and and people say, well, who cares about revenue projections? But this, you've heard all the talk about budgets for the universities being cut, budgets for schools being cut, and just for just every state agency being cut. This is a reason the state revenue collections have just been real sluggish for well over a year now. But March was it's a very good month. What did you say? What was it? 12.5%?
Yeah, about 52 million.
Which equates to $52 million above the estimate. And we'll have to see what happens in the next couple of months to see if that's a dawn of a new era in revenue collection for the state. It might have just been the fact that last in 2016 session, there were some changes made about reporting deadlines for corporations.
Right.
And that might have been, this might be a 1 month blimp, because 48 million, about 52 million in increased revenue projections was from the corporate tax collection. So we'll see what happens in April and May to see if that trend continues, or to see if we go back to what's become the norm, where the revenue collections have been real sluggish, and that's forced the governor and the legislature to make multiple rounds of budget cuts.
Yeah. Like you mentioned that last year the legislature changed the due date for corporate taxes to be reported. Instead of March 15th, now it's April 15th. So I guess we have to wait and see once April is done and see how and what way could that affect it, Bobby. I mean, I guess if a lot of people haven't reported yet, April could be another good month.
It could be another good month, but what some people were hypothesizing, I guess that's correct. A lot of experts were guessing, is that the companies would wait until April 15th to file, so they spread those collections out over a couple more months.
Right.
But if the companies did, sort of business as usual and filed on March 15th, like they have, every year until this year, then that might have made March a blimp, and then the collections would go back down in April. I mean, there's really no way of telling, I guess, unless you just start polling companies, and no one's going to do that, or even if the Department of Revenue did it, they wouldn't release that information. So it'll sort of work itself out over April and May. So we'll see exactly where the revenue collections are. But right now the state needs some help. During this past session, most agencies got a 10% budget cut. So if the revenue collection increase, that could be a good sign for the state.
Yeah, of course, for the fiscal year, which ends June 30th, collections are still down like $80 million, about 2.2%. So the legislative leaders, Tate Reeves and Philip Gunn, and the governor, Phil Bryant, not getting too excited yet about the numbers, are they, Bobby? Being probably wisely cautious about things.
Right, based on what we've been talking about, we don't know exactly how the corporate collections are going to play out over the next couple of months. If you look at the other major revenue categories, sales tax, which is the biggest category, it continues to be sluggish. The personal income tax is not growing like those returns collections aren't growing like a lot of people thought they would or think they should be. So there's still a lot of reason to be cautious, but everybody was glad that for at least 1 month revenue collections were up, and sort of got help dig the state. It didn't. That month hadn't dug the state out of the hole, as you mentioned, $80 million shortfall, but at least it did. The hole didn't get any deeper.
They're still trying to get some budgets worked out, of course, for the State Department of Transportation, for instance. So, Bobby, could this, maybe if they get another good report in April, I mean, will this have any effect on how much they appropriate for the budgets that are still out there?
Yeah, I don't think it would for the budgets there's three budgets out there: the transportation, the state aid road program, which is a program that provides state money to county roads, and then the budget for the Attorney General. I don't think it would affect the budget for the Attorney General, but one of the issues that's been going on is a lot of people, including a lot of powerful business groups, have been bemoaning the fact that the state's roads and bridges are in really sad shape and are getting, they're not getting, and there's not enough money for the upkeep of the state transportation system. So if the revenue collections continue to improve, we perhaps could see a little bit more money for roads and bridges. We'll just have to see, that's at least something that can be considered. And then, just throw this out, the governor is still talking about the lottery, so I don't know if he would include that in a special session. But he was talking about it on a radio show down here in Jackson last week. So we just had to see where that conversation goes in the coming weeks.
You mentioned sales tax collections being down, but use tax collections are up. So that's some more good news within the bigger good news of revenue collections, Bobby. And of course, this goes back to online retailers voluntarily collecting what's called the use tax. It's kind of a sales tax, I guess, the 7% tax on items sold online to Mississippians. And of course, Herb Frierson has been working to get those. Did I get the right guy, Bobby? Herb Frierson? Yeah. To get
Revenue Commissioner,
Department of Revenue, to get companies to voluntarily collect, and they're doing so, Bobby. And that maybe is a source of revenue for the transportation needs.
That's right. That's the House leadership, and the House voted to take those voluntary collections and divert that to the transportation needs. And of course, the Senate rejected that proposal, and that's why they're going in a special session at some point in time before July 1st to take up the budget for the Department of Transportation. As you mentioned, use tax collections were up in March. What was it, about 8 or 9%? Brad, you got the numbers?
8.9%, about $20 million collected.
Yeah. Now, the important thing to remember there is the sales tax collections make up about 35, 36, 37% of the overall state revenue.
Yeah.
The use tax collections are a much smaller category. I mean, I think it's about under 5%, but still a bump of that much is nothing to sneeze at, and it could be a source of revenue in the future.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, Bobby, with all the cuts and the revenue issues they're having, I mean, the state will take what it can get,
right?
On this front as well. So use tax collections are up. I think about 20 online retailers are now voluntarily collecting, and there's still the thought. I mean, most states are. This tax is being collected in most states. Of course, Tate Reeves has talked about being against it. He frames it as being a new tax, even though there is technically a law that you have to put this on your income tax when you file. It's not really enforceable, Bobby, but how much of an impact? I mean, is there? I know we've talked about the possibility of how much money this could bring in. I mean, could it end up being a significant amount to help with transportation or just the general budget?
Well, there's talk that this, Amazon is the biggest online retailer, and there's an estimate that just Amazon itself, the fact that it has voluntarily agreed to collect this tax, there's an estimate that could boost the state general fund by between $15 and $30 million a year. And then there's other retailers, there's a thought that, you could be up to close to $100 million a year if all these companies collected the tax. And of course, they don't collect the tax, Brad, because there was a Supreme Court ruling back in the 90s,
right,
saying that the state could not force a company that didn't have a brick and mortar presence in that state to collect the use tax, which is the same thing essentially as a sales tax. So, But now a lot of there's a lot of companies are agreeing to voluntarily collect the tax. Collect the 7% tax when you make a purchase, and they remit that money to the state. And as you said, if the company doesn't collect the tax, under state law, we're supposed to report that tax on on our state income tax returns and settle up with the state, pay up through the when we file our income tax returns. But few people do that, and so.
Well, Tate Reeves says he's done it.
Yeah. Tate Reeves says he doesn't agree with it, but he reports it on his income tax returns. My wife is the one that buys items online, and she's responsible for filing those state tax returns. So I just let her answer that question in the Harrison household.
Yeah, it's the same thing with me, Bobby. I'm not good with the numbers. That's why I'm in journalism. Let's switch gears a little bit. Talk about a bill that was recently signed by Governor Phil Bryant, dealing with a building being named after the late Alan Nunley, former U.S. Congressman, former state senator from the region. He represented Lee and Pontotoc counties when he was serving down there in Jackson. Later served in the U.S. House of Representatives. Of course, he passed away from cancer just a couple of years ago. So it's going to be the Department of Environmental Quality building that's going to be named after Alan, correct?
That's correct, and it's a few blocks from the Capitol, and it's an honor for the late senator. And I still refer to him as State Senator Nunley, even though when he died he was in the U.S. House of Representatives. But I covered him and knew him pretty well when he worked down here as a member of the Mississippi Senate. He was a former Appropriations Committee chair, Public Health chair, and he was also chair of public at one time chair of the Environmental Committee, and that's what hence the Department of Environmental Quality building being named after him. Which is, as I said, is an honor for the late Senator Nunley and his family. And as I was writing this story, it dawned on me, Brad, that there's now 3 buildings, right across the street from the Capitol, named after former Northeast Mississippi legislators, which is pretty incredible. The transportation building, which is just to the southwest of the Capitol, Catty Corner, is named after former House Speaker Billy McCoy. His name is not known as the William J. Billy McCoy transportation building, and the state Public Employees Retirement System building. That's the PERS building where they handle the retirement for state employees. Which is located to the southeast of the Capitol. Is named after former House Speaker Tim Ford, who represented Lee and Prentice counties in the legislature. Served 16 years as Speaker. And,
wow.
That sign hadn't gone up yet, but the 2016 legislation named that PERS building after late Speaker Tim Ford. And I thought it was interesting, Brad, that you have the William Winter Archives and History building is a few blocks from the Capitol. Outside that, I don't think there's any buildings within walking distance named after governors. But you have 3 buildings named after Northeast Mississippi legislators within a stone's throw of the Capitol. So I don't know what that says, but I thought it was interesting.
Well, I think, Bobby, maybe it speaks to the impact that Northeast Mississippi has on the state government. I think it's pretty well documented. I think this is a little bit evidence of that.
Right. Yes. Well, all 3 of those, Speakers Ford and McCoy and Chairman Alan Nunley, they were all significant figures in the Mississippi legislature over the past 20 years or so, or for Tim Ford and Billy McCoy longer than that. You're right. That says something about their influence. And there's other Northeast Mississippi legislators who had significant influence. Jack Gordon was appropriations chair for years from Oklahoma, and so there's been other ones through the years.
All right, before we get out of here, Bobby, I want to check in with you on the possibility of a special session. We know it's going to happen. They got to get these budgets passed that we previously mentioned for Department of Transportation and others. So any update yet on when that might happen?
No, I think it's going to be later instead of sooner. The new budget year starts before July 1st, so we know it's going to be before then, but most people think it's going to be sometimes in June, May at the earliest, but not in April.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye. Yeah, go ahead.
The question is whether there'll be the governor will add other items to the agenda, whether it's a lottery, as we mentioned, or the rewrite of the education funding formula. We just have to see where those issues go.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Capitol View. Thank you all for tuning in. Again, coming to you every Monday around 2 p.m. here live at djournal.com. And if you don't catch it live, just catch the replay later in the day. You can follow Bobby's work in the Journal every day and also at djournal.com, and follow Bobby on Twitter at Bobby Harrison9. I'm on there as well. If you wish to follow, it's at Brad Locke. And that does it for Capitol View this week. Bobby, appreciate your time as always. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. And we will see y'all next week.